This is going to be more of a video for you guys to just listen to than watch. I'm going to put a series of playlists and other supporting information in the description section down there for you guys. So please take advantage of that. There's going to be a lot of very important and corroborative information there. And not really just give a strong sense of validity to what I'm telling you. Nail it down tight that what I'm telling you is 100%. And I'm going to do my best to keep it brief. And I've decided to go live because, frankly, I need more memory on my device, and I need to make sure that this information gets up in a time sensitive function here. And so, when I was working with an asset in the field, which I had first met at a conference which I spoke in 2015. And if you're not familiar with that presentation, that is the entanglement of human consciousness and artificial intelligence, um, which is up on our Phoenix Rising channel. And I'll put that in the description as well for you guys. And maybe one of the most key things to note from that presentation, which really has so much good information in it that has stood the test of time, is the fact that I do talk about a man named Charles Lieber, and I put it in the context of viruses, um, and what we're seeing today. And this is back in 2015 again, y'all. And I specifically stated that we're going to have to be thinking about this in the future, and that um, we're going to have to allocate new laws and so on and so forth as we're continuing to fight this system that you're going to reference more tonight, and how it functions with the cloud and the brain and the nervous system and assets in the field and all of this stuff that's going on right now. And lo and behold, Charles Lieber was picked up by the Justice Department for his connection to Wuhan laboratories, um, the current pandemic and how that's played out. And they picked him up after I said the proper, I put that context as the key to show what he was going to be, essentially picked up for 5 years later. Okay. So there's that. But to take you guys back to 2017 with the same asset that I met at that conference, um, I had already asked for the assignment into a rogue intelligence faction, really embedded within law enforcement, that is connected to organized criminal activity that is not exclusive to child and human trafficking, but is heavily on this. And we hooked ourselves in to the domestic violence office in Plano, Texas, and their police department, which had a a man in oversight of that department named Frank Eric Dockery. I'll put that information in the description as well. And he was involved in an organized crime ring, but he's very illustrative of this group that I just referenced, with the law enforcement as their cover involved in all these different things. And so much so that he's currently awaiting the federal sentencing in a facility in Denton that's a federal holdover facility where he has a U.S. Marshals hold. Um, his dad is the chief deputy Dockery of that same agency there. And so that's very important to realize. Wow, that there's a strong point of corroboration right there off the bat that says, well, this group is really there. And so, yeah, busted in a big drug ring. Dad runs the jail over in the next county over. And this is a multi generational law enforcement faction that is embedded heavily, that's involved in this organized criminal activity. And so we hooked into that. That counterpart of mine that I was working with at that time that I met at the conference had a falling out as a result of how we were essentially exploited for our operational potential together on the op. Neither one of us really understood exactly what was going on at the time, honestly. And that's a lot of times how these things will function. And it's not about blame game between she and I, but it's turned into that for some of us. And the subject of this investigation now, what's been forthcoming and ongoing, is Alexia Davis. She calls me out of the blue 3 days later, after this falling out occurred between myself and this other counterpart, and she was just in the worst dire straits out there, in a really rough area of Dallas, kind of out in Pleasant Grove, if you know where that is. And I went to go get her. At that time, I had had a warrant issued for my arrest as a result of hooking into Frank Dockery's office. And we decided to take off together. And how she was activated and all of this is very personal and stuff that I'm going to omit from this. And so I want to let you know that, because it's very sensitive information and not everybody needs to know this. And that's not really something that I do often. And so that's why I've noted it to you today, um, in this recording, because the sheer timing of it is questionable. Like, how is this a coincidence? But we went through Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Washington, into Oregon, and then back around to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And we collected the testimony of an individual there that will also be in the description, as it pertained to her involvement with the Fraternal Order of the Eagles and ultimately gang stalking that she was involved in, per her own statements, as it surrounded a man named Gary Norton, who is a billionaire, um, owns the premier theme park destination, as they call it, up in Idaho, which is Silverwood. They were targeting his son and him to get money. Very just bad stuff that they do to these people, in groups, and using this fraternal order and law enforcement connections as a cover. Everything from drug running, other things, and in the recordings that we obtained from her, there's helicopters coming out. When I say they will, all this stuff will be down there for you guys. And you can see us gather the information, release it on a social media platform, which is how we do this. This is something that we utilize these platforms for special operations, for transparency. And we did have a subsequent arrest that's very relevant to the statements that we collected in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, from the Fraternal Order of the Eagles, as it pertains to a child sex sting. And so we got him. We got our man there, continued to move forward. I got picked up in Seattle, Super Bowl Sunday night, of 2018 in January. Alex drove the truck back. I was released on bond, and we got started our own little business together. She was living with me, and we were really doing well. She got triggered again. We separated. I went to go make a series of videos that you'll see in the comments, or I'm sorry, in the description, after receiving an unconstitutional social media ban, after being inserted back into the Collin County Detention Facility. Okay. So I took off my ankle monitor. They put me back in. They put me on probation for an evading arrest case with a social media ban, which is unconstitutional. And so I took the social media ban because I knew it was unconstitutional, and that myself and my people can exploit this later on as a force multiplier to say, look, we've already got you guys out here in this rogue intelligence faction that's involved in this multi generational abuse, unconstitutionally, trying to shut Eugene up when he made a series of videos, all of which the information that he had gave in those videos has been proven true and valid. And let me explain. In those videos, I openly state that I was working a counter sabotage operation. I openly state that we knew there was a connection between Collin and Denton counties, specifically as it pertained to child sex abuse, and that they were putting people in charge of child sex crimes, which were actively involved in those crimes. And so not only did they pick up Frank Dockery subsequent to those videos, they picked up a man named Brian Preston Gibbons in Denton County, who was the head of the Crimes Against Children unit in Lewisville, Texas, which is currently an agency that we're dealing with as it unfolds to the corruption within the department. And I'll get to that. And so Brian Preston Gibbons was, you know, a really bad guy going to pick up this girl, the subject of his investigation, from school in his cop car. He got her an apartment right next to her family, ritualistic abuse, putting guns to her head, the trauma, the rape, everything that he did. He's in prison for that now. Again, as a former officer of LPD, Louisville Police Department. And so we're still moving forward, right? We're still making ground. We're still having real tangible results of the things that I said in the playlist. As you hear me speaking with the U.S. Marshals, you hear me speaking with FBI Task Force Officer Jeff Rich, Collin County Sheriff's Deputy, and other law enforcement agencies, and release that information to purposely violate my own probation, for which I went to prison, did 22 months, as this continued to unfold. And I knew what I was doing. I did this on purpose just to get in even more embedded into this investigation. And so we're coming full circle from this now, and I don't want to get into Alexia's connections as to how she falls under a project called Project Unicorn, but I will go ahead and state the name of the project. And what it is a mind and behavior control um, project, which they'll utilize cloud functions and nervous system manipulation essentially for um, operational purposes amongst assets. And it's a very difficult thing if you've been through the trauma that she's been through, to even look at the fact that you are an asset, because this is a compartmented aspect of your psyche that you haven't dealt with in the mirror. You don't really know when you look into your own eyes that that's who you are. And so for me to be at spook status means, well, I have the opportunity to look at, see who I am. I can stay awake. I can help another asset in the field even reach that potential if they're ready to do that. Because a lot of the assets that I work with, they're not, they'll literally tell you, hey, I know that I'm awake right now. Here's the information transfer or whatever the thing is. And they're going to go back to sleep. And I've worked with a lot of those gals. Usually it's a chick that I work with. And, you know, bless her heart, she's been through so much with this, and her family is so connected into this by way of her ex, or excuse me, her that a former sheriff in a county in New Mexico is her great uncle, directly, like she's a direct descendant of this man. And this is how we got into Skinner, um, and how he fits in another way, because Skinner began his law enforcement in New Mexico. He's connected to this group, same MO, same connections, same cover that they use to perform these crimes. And um, it's noteworthy to mention that in the video where I'm speaking with Collin County Sheriff's Deputy Bacon, um, I I mentioned to him that the Texas Ranger, he said he was going to forward the information to the Texas Rangers, and I said, well, let me be the point of contact for them on this investigation. Then, if that's the case, when you do that, you let them know who I am, what we discussed, and you can push that up. And I really tripped up Officer Bacon. He does admit to widespread corruption in his department, in the video, in recorded statements. That's in the description. And lo and behold, to kind of give you a finality on that, I do an interview with Laura Eisenhower about how an operation that Sheriff Skinner did with Operation Medusa as a psychological operation for his election platform was this psychological operation. It is relevant to Project Pegasus with my own statements that I've made for years. If we understand the operational potential to exploit narratives on projects and how that works from a military standpoint, this is called understanding and communicating through narratives for operational potential. And in the Greek myth, Perseus removes the head of Medusa, and then ultimately kills the Kraken with it, right? And this is relevant to how we're doing this today with this whole Q disinformation campaign that does have elements of truth in it, but we're on the front lines with this deal right here. We're right in these people's face and embedded within the law enforcement community that have been perpetrating these crimes that everybody's talking about. And and so Skinner's a part of that, and it's important to realize that. And when we look at the progression of this into Louisville now, Alexia is so embedded in this thing that her own stepfather is part of this faction, and what he's doing is he he's part of an extortion ring that that he sells guns, all these other things, but there's there's an element of what he's doing to blackmail other people in positions of power, right? And this is what they do, and they do this with snuff films, you guys, and pedophilia and other things that they're involved in. And he is a part of this. And so when he first approached me, he approached me in a store on camera, which we do have this video. Okay. He's this guy is done. Um, he approaches me violently, aggressively. He keeps saying, "You don't have anything on me. You don't have anything on me." This was about 2 months ago now. Fast forward, I called to report the rape of his stepdaughter, Alexia, to him via voicemail message. He returns my call really aggressively. He states the same thing that he said in the store on the video statements. He says, "You don't have anything on me." Why would I think that I had anything on you? I'm just calling to report the rape of your stepdaughter. I thought you should know about it. And of course, anybody would want to know about it if this has happened to their stepdaughter, and they should be very thankful to somebody who's reporting this to them. And he threatened me openly with his law enforcement connections within the Louisville Police Department. He then stepped outside the protocol of dispatch to connect me with an officer, give them my number, have him call me. He didn't make a report about this. He didn't call anybody. He called one of his buddies and say, "Hey, I need some help with this." And then I get this guy calling me, and he threatens me. We already released that information. It's public. It's on this channel. And so, well, actually, it's on my other channel, and I'll put that in the description. Um, and so this has moved this investigation up exponentially.